Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea's exports fetched higher prices last month for an 8th month in a row. It was an on-year rise of almost 17%, the biggest increase in well over a decade. The vice chairman of Samsung Electronics, Lee Jae-yong, is released from prison on parole. That's to mark National Liberation Day this weekend, but he won't be able to go back to work fully, at least for now. And it's a 3-day weekend for most people in Korea, but with coronavirus cases near an all-time high, the authorities are saying don't travel. There are free virus tests on offer at highway rest stops from today until the end of the month. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea's export and import prices both rose in July. The Bank of Korea says the export price index increased by 3.5% on month, rising for an 8th month in a row to just over 111. The export index is in terms of Korean won. Compared to a year earlier, that's a rise of almost 17%, the most since 2009. The increase was mainly due to higher prices of manufactured goods, including semiconductors and petroleum products, as well as agricultural and fishery products. Import prices rose 3.3% on month, mainly on higher oil prices. The vice chairman of Samsung Electronics, Lee Jae-yong, was let out of prison this morning on parole, one of 810 people granted a provisional release to mark National Liberation Day on August 15th. He's still subject to several restrictions, including a 5-year employment ban and limits on overseas travel. Min Soo-hyun reports.
Samsung's de facto leader Lee Jae-yong was released from Seoul Detention Center at around 10 a.m. Friday morning. Before leaving, he stood in front of a crowd of reporters and delivered a public apology.
I sincerely apologize for the concerns I've caused. I'm aware of the concerns, criticisms, and high expectations. I'll do my best.
About an hour later, he was seen arriving at the Samsung headquarters in Seoul, fueling speculation that he may return to his management role earlier than expected. However, technically, Samsung's de facto leader is barred from running the company for the time being, as he is subject to a 5-year employment restriction, meaning he won't be able to return to the office until the second half of 2027.
Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong's prison term ends in July 2022. The law restricts his employment from the time his prison term ends, so his 5-year employment ban will remain in effect until July 2027.
But if he wants an early return to office, he can apply for a special exemption. The Justice Ministry will review his application, and a final approval will be needed from the Justice Minister. The 53-year-old will also be kept under supervision until next July, when his sentence is complete. This means he will need to follow certain rules under the supervision of local authorities. For example, if he plans to change his residence or travel for more than a month, he's required to report it. While there's been mixed response to his parole, the Blue House on Friday asked for understanding from the public, saying the decision was made in the national interest. Early on Monday, the Justice Ministry also explained that his parole was decided after considering the economic situation, both home and abroad, amid the pandemic. In January, Lee Jae-yong was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison over a bribery case. He was convicted of bribing then-President Park Geun-hye to help his succession as the head of Samsung Group. Regardless of his parole today, he still faces 2 other legal battles. One is related to the controversial merger of 2 Samsung affiliates in 2015, and the other is over his alleged use of propofol, a strictly controlled sedative. Min Soo-hyun, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Friday. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, good afternoon. Thanks for making time today.
Good afternoon.
Well, another gain for stocks on Wall Street overnight. On the one hand, jobless claims coming in at the expected level, but producer prices up a staggering 7.8% last month in the U.S., the most on record. The Dow and the S&P at new highs. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, if you look at the U.S. market, S&P as well as NASDAQ did add some bit of a rise, 0.3% to 0.35%, whereas the Dow Jones was kind of flat and small caps was slightly down. Interestingly, even though there are quite a bit of strong inflation numbers coming through, the CPI rising at 5.4% year on year, and the PPI rising a significant amount. Despite all that, if you look at the U.S. 10-year government bond rates, it seems to be stabilizing at below 1.4%. Right now, it's trading at 1.3%. And also, if you look at the overall earnings numbers, it seems to be showing in the right track. And even though there are concerns about the Delta strain COVID-19 variant, we think that the economy seems to be opening up quite reasonably in the right direction. Having said that, if you look at the upbeat U.S. jobless claim numbers as well as the unemployment numbers and all, we think that U.S. economy recovering is in the right track. So all in all, we think that the fundamental is much more important than these headline news on the COVID-19 or the inflation numbers. If the corporate earnings remains to be very strong, and then that should continue to be the case over the next several quarters, then we think the U.S. market can rise even further from the current level. However, though, if you look at the month of August and September, usually tends to be a fairly weak month. Usually towards the end of the month, we see quite significant rise. So we might see somewhat of a taking breather period for U.S. market, but nevertheless, we think that earnings numbers are staggering and that it has not been this kind of strong earnings that we haven't seen in the past. So as long as fundamentals are strong, we think that the market can further rise by the end of this year.
Well, it's been something of the opposite story here in Korea. Today, the main stock index, the Kospi, was down for a 7th session in a row, and this time by quite a bit. The Kospi now below 3,200 points, and the Kosdaq today also down quite a lot. Tell us about the domestic market.
Right. It's quite perturbing to see this kind of correction. If we look at the earnings numbers and the fundamentals of Kospi, it is showing the record high numbers, and it continues to show very strong numbers. But because of skewedness towards the semiconductor industry, Korea having Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix being around 30% plus, and all the semiconductor businesses are as much as 40% of the market capitalization. We saw major sellout within this industry, particularly memory DRAM industry side. For the past several days, we have seen foreign investors dumping these stocks. And even today, if you look at the Samsung Electronics, the net selling amounted to 31 million shares plus today. Yesterday was 22 million shares. The day before, 13 million shares. This is quite ridiculous level of amount, unless we think that there's a serious problem with this company. We don't think that this kind of selling can last. We think that this is very short-term oriented, assuming that the DRAM price will fall quite sharply towards the fourth quarter and next year, that the DRAM cycle is over, memory cycle is over. Unless you think that, we don't think that this kind of short selling can last for that long period of time. Having said that, because of that, we did see Kospi as a whole did decline by about 1.16% today. Kosdaq was also down by 1.26%. Quite perturbing to see how foreign investors and using short selling to control the market trend. We don't think that the semiconductor business is at peak per se in terms of the earnings. The third quarter should be even better. Yes, we are seeing some spot prices going down, but in terms of the contract prices, we don't think that it's going to fall that much. It seems that as if that Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix is actually losing their market share, or if this kind of share price makes sense. Share price movement makes sense. So therefore, we don't think that this can last very long. We will have to wait and see because of the short-term correction-wise. We do see that the DRAM price is falling in terms of the spot prices. So therefore, volatility might last a bit longer. But on a longer-term basis, we don't think that Korea's fundamental is gone away.
Yeah, remarkable selling in recent days by foreign investors here in Korea. And to switch gears for a minute, the U.S. Senate has passed the big infrastructure bill worth $1 trillion. And as we've discussed before, it seems to add new reporting requirements for cryptocurrency exchanges. Still needs to be passed by the House, but that's a concern for some in the crypto space. So the price of Bitcoin has recovered from its recent low, but right now it's sitting at around $45,000. What do you see happening with respect to this bill and cryptocurrencies?
Right. As far as the money supply are concerned, if you look at the U.S. money supply growth rate of M1, it's rising at around mid 10% level, so somewhere between 15 to 16% year-on-year growth rate. If that continues, and even though we are expecting some tapering coming through, we don't think that the liquidity injection would be taken away. We will see some gradual decline, but nevertheless, the money supply growth rate will continue to be strong. If so, then the alternative assets such as gold, silver, and cryptocurrency should further rise in the future. If you look at these three asset classes, you can see that the commodity prices, so-called gold and silver, are going down or has gone down quite significantly recently, while the cryptocurrency has increased from around low level by now about 50% plus from its bottom. So clearly, most of these money that are investing into the alternative assets, they have invested all into the cryptocurrency rather than other assets such as gold and silver. I'm not sure how long that will last, but in any case, adding all these three classes of assets, it should be rising somewhere around 10% plus over the next 1 year or so because of that liquidity injection that you're seeing that reduces the value of currency and that people will be looking for alternative assets such as gold, silver, and cryptocurrency. So, yes, there's a regulatory environment issues. Yes, people are concerned about the cryptocurrency, but as long as the alternative asset class remains to be very important, that in the past also gold and silver were used as alternative assets, even though they're not currencies. So if U.S. government introduces the cyber currency, we don't think that that will take away the value of cryptocurrencies. It's just a currency that is anti-government per se, and it remains to be such, and that has certain value to it. So we think that as long as U.S. government continues to print money, we think that the cryptocurrency can further rise. And if not from the cryptocurrency, then it might affect the gold and silver value. So all in all, we think that this is an area that we should at least invest a certain part of the asset in the future.
Well, also, finally, Mr. Yu, somewhat related to monetary policy, household loans in Korea increasing by almost 10 trillion won, which is about $9 billion or so. Interest rates at all-time lows. So if they start going the other way, that could be a burden for some people on their payments. Should that be a concern? And what can you say about timing and other aspects of this situation?
Right. I've been talking about this issue in a different aspect. If they raise interest rate on the overall BOK, raises interest rate, and that affects the consumer lending rate, we think that we'll probably face quite significant meltdown per se in terms of the consumer debt area. We think that the better way to handle this is trying to increase the value of the asset of the retail investors. And we've been saying that the equity market needs to rise further as more citizens of Korea participate into the equity area. If you look at the where the liabilities or debt rises happens is related to the real estate market. So as long as the real estate prices continues to go up, then we will see continuation of the debt rises. And that's skewed towards the only small pie of the population. So therefore, we need to see other assets such as stock market needs to rise, and that value increases that affects the debt level. So we think that as long as the property price continues to rise, we don't see any rooms for the overall debt size can be reduced. So if the government is trying to tackle this through the interest rate, then in fact it will affect the small mid individuals, so-called the low-income bracket individuals, and the sub-debt levels and all that would affect very significantly negatively. Raising interest rate is not going to affect these high net worth individuals per se, having more than 2, 3, 4, 5 houses. So I think that the better way of handling it is not through the interest rate rise, but it is through the providing some kind of tax benefits to the investing into the equity market and affecting more of a low to mid-income bracket rather than the high end of the individuals.
So many levels on which we have to think about this issue, Mr. Yu. We value your perspective and appreciate you coming on to share that with us. Thank you for coming on and have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Most people in Korea will have a 3-day weekend starting tomorrow for National Liberation Day. That might normally be a chance to take a short trip, but the health authorities are telling people to stay home to stop the spread of the virus. Jang Tae-hyun reports.
As the highly contagious Delta variant is still rapidly spreading nationwide, health authorities are urging people to refrain from traveling around the country during the upcoming 3-day weekend.
If the Delta variant spreads through people meeting others, moving around and attending rallies during the National Liberation Day holiday, there is a high risk of it developing into a large-scale epidemic. Please take a rest at home with your family and take the COVID-19 test after the vacation.
The commissioner added that one person infected with the Delta variant can transmit the virus to more than 5 people. So, the safest thing to do is avoid meeting people apart from those living in the same household. In the meantime, 400,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson's Janssen vaccine are arriving in South Korea on Sunday. When added to the 100,000 doses that arrive at the end of July, a total of 500,000 shots will be given to prisoners and those working on sea voyages. They will get the one-shot Janssen vaccine because it's easier to give to those who can't make it within the vaccination intervals. The shots will be given starting August 23rd. Jang Tae-hyun, Arirang News.
Also, ahead of the 3-day weekend, South Korea started offering free coronavirus tests at the nation's highway rest stops. They want to stop the spread of the virus among people who do choose to travel this weekend. And our Kim Yeon-sung is at one of those new test centers with more. Yeon-sung, tell us about the decision to offer tests to people on the highway.
Well, Devin, I'm standing at a service station where Prime Minister Kim Boo-kyum visited earlier today. And when he visited, he said something like, the viral trend of COVID-19 has reversed lately. And what he means by that is more people have been bringing in the virus from regions outside of the capital area into Greater Seoul rather than the opposite. So health authorities are trying to curb the spread of the virus in the capital region. And to detect any coronavirus carriers before they reach the densely populated capital area, health authorities have set up temporary COVID-19 test centers at 4 northbound expressway rest stops heading into Greater Seoul. I'm at one of them, the Icheon service station on National Highway 37, but there are 3 more, located at the Ansong service station, Hwasong service station, and the Yongin service station. Today's the opening day, ahead of the long weekend to mark Korean Independence Day. These centers will operate until the end of this month.
Since it's holiday season, we expect there to be a lot more people coming back into the Seoul area after their holidays. So operation hours are from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. because more people tend to drive home during the afternoons rather than early in the morning.
So Yeon-sung, you told us about these 4 test centers at the highway rest stops. How many people they're expecting to test there? Also, what are they doing to make sure the people who stop there are safe?
Well, first and foremost, the people who are testing at these test centers will be sectioned off from visitors who are using the service station. There's a separate parking space for the people who are getting tested, and after they get tested, they're advised to go straight home and wait until their results come out before they resume their daily lives or start heading into work. The centers are looking a bit slow right now, but health authorities expect them to be busier over the weekend. Earlier today, I had the chance to talk to a healthcare worker at one of the busier service stations. Take a listen.
This morning, we tested around 30 people, but during peak holiday season, I heard that this station is visited by roughly 12,000 people a day. So when it's busy, I think we'll be testing about a tenth of that, so maybe 1,000 people.
That's all I have for now, but I'll be back at our 7 p.m. newscast. So if any of our viewers have questions, feel free to reach out through me to email. I'll try to answer them. Back to you, Devin.
All right, we'll look forward to getting some of those questions and hearing from you, Yeon-sung. You've been out there all day. We appreciate it, certainly. Thank you for that. In other news, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has authorized COVID-19 vaccine booster shots for people with weakened immune systems. They might need extra protection. Also, the authorities in South Korea will now allow the AstraZeneca vaccine to be given to people younger than 50, but older than 30. They've also struck a deal with Pfizer to buy 30 million doses for use next year. Choi Min-jung has the latest.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration on Thursday approved the use of a 3rd dose of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines for people with weakened immune systems. This includes those who received organ transplants or are diagnosed with cancer, and is equal to less than 3% of the U.S. adult population. Experts say these booster shots will provide extra protection from COVID-19, as 2 doses of the vaccine might not be enough for the most vulnerable to produce an adequate immune response. With the green light given from the FDA, the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee will hold a meeting on Friday to discuss the matter. However, the FDA said that other individuals who are fully vaccinated will not need an additional dose at this time. Meanwhile, in South Korea, young people who register for leftover vaccines can get the AstraZeneca shots.
We're planning to change the vaccination plan so that from August 13th, medical institutions and public health centers can administer AstraZeneca vaccines to people aged over 30 who are registering for leftover vaccines.
The government has recommended that only those over 50 be vaccinated with the AstraZeneca vaccine over fears of blood clots. The measure comes in a bid to prevent leftover vaccines from being wasted. South Korea on Friday has also signed a deal with Pfizer to purchase 30 million doses for next year, with an option to buy another 30 million by the end of the year. This is part of the government's plan to secure 50 million doses of mRNA vaccines in 2022. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The South Korean Navy has taken delivery of its first locally developed 3,000-ton submarine, widely believed to be able to fire submarine-launched ballistic missiles. The military has not confirmed this capability, but it's a tactical game changer because it's harder to detect and intercept missiles fired from a moving submarine. A commissioning ceremony was held Friday on the southern island of Koje at a shipyard belonging to Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering. The sub is called the Dosan An Changho, named after the South Korean independence fighter. It's 83.5 meters long and 9.6 meters wide and can carry up to 50 crew. It can fire missiles from its 6 vertical launching tubes. That makes South Korea only the 8th country in the world able to produce 3,000-ton class submarines with its own technology. South Korea on Saturday will mark the International Memorial Day for Comfort Women, a day to remember the victims of Imperial Japan's system of sexual slavery during World War II. Several events will be held online in remembrance of the first ever public testimony made by a South Korean victim 30 years ago. Shin Yeon has this report.
August 14th marks the International Memorial Day for Comfort Women. It's a day to remember the victims of Imperial Japan's sexual enslavement. 30 years ago, on August 14, 1991, the late Kim Hak-sun, a South Korean victim, made the first ever public testimony. In 2017, the South Korean government designated August 14th as a National Memorial Day to restore the dignity of Comfort Women victims. This year, most events for the day have moved online due to the pandemic. The Seoul Metropolitan Government will host an online global forum titled Remembering Comfort Women Globally, where some of the world's most renowned university professors will come together and discuss the truth and historical details behind Japan's use of so-called comfort women. Gyeonggi-do Province will show videos of the late Kim Hak-sun's testimony and how the survivors are doing now. Gyeongsangnam-do Province will hold photo exhibitions and stream some performances online. Historians say more than 200,000 women, mostly Koreans, were forced into sexual enslavement by colonial Japan. Of some 238 registered victims in the country, only 14 are still alive. Most are over 90 years old and still waiting for a heartfelt apology from Japan. But Tokyo still stands its ground, claiming that the issue was resolved by a 2015 deal made during South Korea's previous administration. Japan had provided 1 billion yen, which is around $9 million to fund a foundation for the victims. But the current Moon administration said the 2015 deal failed to reflect the opinions of the victims who just wanted Japan to admit to its crimes against humanity. Shin Yeon, Arirang News.
And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.